Hey guys, it's Book of Catherine. So, sorry, I'm still not doing very well. So, this is me with makeup on. It's just, oh well, I should have put on bright lipstick. Um, but I was just thinking about it. I was watching my the GOP thing that I did, figuring it out, how they fooled us. Because I posted it today for Kentucky and the things they have a vote coming up. And a bunch of states have a vote coming up. What's interesting to me when I watched it was I was saying how they fooled us with the voting across the board. But as I watched it, I was saying, oh, I was watching all the things that have changed from my research ever since then. It's been like a year and a few months, and boy, we've learned a lot in our research since filming that. It's been a lot. And I said things like, it's my suspicion that they did this blockading because of Obamacare. They were protecting, I think Big Pharma did it to protect Obamacare. And I was right about that, like Big Pharma and Obamacare. And it ended up leading me to find BASF and the link to Bill Gates Foundation and vaccines, things like that. And Gates Foundation actually has the Sustainable Development Circle. The Gates Foundation actually has this Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development as their link, as their artwork. That's the Gates Foundation artwork. I was like, holy cow. But BASF in their event handouts for Big Pharma, they actually have vaccines as their top 3 products that they hand out in pharmaceuticals. And I was just like, how did I miss that? Anyway, but I was going through it and I heard myself say, like, well, at least the GOP didn't make me feel or no, I didn't say that. I said, what was it? I said, oh, at least the GOP didn't shame me for being married. And I had felt like the left had shamed me for being married. I said, oh, they supported marriage. And I was laughing at that as I watched it because I was like, the GOP didn't support marriage at all. Like I see things so differently now, the way they ping pong us against each other. They make you think that they support one thing and they make you think that they support it. Let me give you an example. Like, I was thinking about it in my own life. Like, my mother was a Democrat, right? And my father was a Republican. I didn't know any of that. We weren't allowed to talk politics. I found that about that into my 20s. I found that out. And I was shocked. I thought it was totally different. I thought they're both something totally different. I thought they're of the same. It was just a totally different thing than I thought or whatever. But what cracks me up now is that they're both Catholic. Like, I was raised in a strict Catholic upbringing. It turned out that they thought they were vastly opposite directions. They thought they were vastly opposite scale, vastly opposite, but they're not. Like, I'm looking at it and I don't know, we say it goes back 30 years, but I really don't know how far this all goes back. And I'm like, no. Like, no. Like, and it's so funny because I'm like, I said I was, independent, right? Like, and I became, like, I flipped between the two. It's so funny because my parents were one on each side and I ended up going between each side in the very beginning. And then right around the time of 9/11, I just, like, left and I became independent. And because of the way the media just flip-flopped. And now I'm finding myself just even more so independent. And I would have told you even yesterday I was becoming more conservative. Even watching the video, I was like, oh, I'm becoming more conservative. And now I'm like, no, I'm just becoming more of a revolutionary. Like, I feel like I'm becoming more of a revolutionary and going back to what the revolutionaries did. Like, more of a revolutionary and going back to, like, revolting against the elites and the 1% and wanting my land rights and my rights to be separate and just be able to earn my keep and have my rights and feel created equal. I'm realizing, like, they have really got us into the idea of I am finding it's really hard to convince people not to vote in someone who's upper class. And that's what the entire American Revolution was about, is that The Pope, I mean, everyone says it was about King George III. Everyone says that's what you'll read when you go online, because that's all that's available is online. They'll all tell you is about between, American revolutionaries and King George III, but it wasn't. It was the entire world, globe of the empire, and the Catholic Church too, and Pope Pius. And Pope Pius said that how dare the American revolutionaries break the bond between master and servant, the God created bond of master and servant. That God created the bond of master and servant, and that there is this relationship between master and servant, and that God created it, and that there are lords, there is the monarchies, and then there were the people, and that the monarchies were made to rule over the people, and that's just the way things were. And the monarchies were the ones who were in the academics, and they went to the good schools, and they had their own circles, and those were the elites of the days, and they were meant to rule over the peasants. And that it was that the entire American Revolution was about, was these people were saying we're created equal with you, and we have the right to govern ourselves. We're smart enough, we're strong enough. And they were farmers. They were just farmers who were farming their own land. They were set out. Some of them were expulsed. Some of them were criminals. They were all sent out into the colonies. Some of them were expelled from their own lands or whatever and sent out into the colonies. And they said, hey, we can govern ourselves. And some of them were really smart. Some of them wrote some freaking pretty amazing documents, but they weren't all academics. They said, we can govern ourselves. And they did a pretty freaking boss job, don't you think? They did a pretty good job. But those people that are in the elites have been salivating over our land. And it's not just our land. Look at Venezuela. I just saw that Trump put an excellent statement recently that's on the whitehouse.gov. If you get on it anytime about the time post this, I think it's September 30th right now, I think I'm posting this, 2019. So they just put an excellent statement, and it goes through some of the things that he's been doing. One of the things he did was put sanctions on Venezuela on their oil and their gold. They're going in sustainable development companies and globalists, this ring of globalists, to anyone who's investing in the Giving Club, these billionaires who put in half their wealth. It doesn't say charity anywhere. I've talked about this before. They go in and they invest their billions, and they get a piece of these countries they go into, even though they didn't vote for it. The people didn't vote to give away their land rights. And they're taking out this oil, and they're taking out the gold, and it's out of Venezuela. And the people of Venezuela have come back, and they even did like a PragerU video that said that. They said they voted in a socialist government because they were told they would get their wealth back. And then instead, the leaders just sold off all their land and mineral rights, and it actually said that all the billionaires of the world came and took all their wealth away, and it actually showed planes flying out of Venezuela with all their wealth. Well, one of that is like taking out the mining, taking out the gold, taking out the oil, and who knows how they're like actually mining all that and how they're actually doing all the gold mining and who they're using. I mean, no wonder they're losing that much weight, and it's terrifying. And so all these sanctions that are going on are to kind of free up these people who didn't ask for any of this. But it's happening to us too. We're learning that Kentucky farmers were had their land rights. They had their land rights. They're growing their own land like the American revolutionaries did. Anyway, I'm getting off on all this stuff. But anyway, in Kentucky, let me finish my thought for you. So in Kentucky, they had their land rights. And we just learned today that the federal government came in with Clinton and with Mitch McConnell, who used to be a Democrat and then switched with Reagan. Remember, we learned that. And a lot of people said that they were Democrats and switched, but McConnell actually, like Reagan was a Democrat and then he switched. But McConnell actually does Democrat actions. Like McConnell was an actual lawyer who did today's left actions. Like his policies matched up back then. Does that make sense? Like Reagan switched parties to continue the same actions he had been doing prior. Does that make sense? His policies continued. The party switched, so he switched to continue the same actions he was doing. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, you can switch parties, but the reasons why and your actions follow through. McConnell switched, but he was doing the same left actions there. The things, I don't know if I'm making any sense. Anyway, sorry, the pain's so bad since the SI started kicking up, so I don't know if I'm making sense. But basically, Kentucky farmers, the federal government stepped in and they said this really loving thing. They said, oh, we want to separate ourselves from big tobacco, so we are going to start banning our landowners from growing tobacco. They didn't say we're going to ban it as a substance. We're not going to make it illegal. We're just going to ban you guys from actually growing it. And I'm like, what? You're not going to let people make profit off their land? And only the growers of Kentucky were like, heck no, they fought back. They're strong people. And they're like, I don't think so. And so McConnell and Clinton in 2001, the same time that they made a deal with the World Trade, the same time they went in and passed that bill S.2277 in March 23rd, 2001, with Senator Feinstein and Pat Roberts to terminate the human rights part of the trade agreement with China that allowed, our entire manufacturing to be harvested out and slave labor camps to begin in China and the Falun Gong to be rounded up. Yeah, those people who said they were trying to save lives by stopping big tobacco being grown here in America, same exact year. They go to the tobacco farmers and say, well, if you want to keep doing tobacco, you'll have to start leasing your land from the federal government. And so they had to start leasing their land. They don't own their land anymore. It was called the Kentucky buyout, the Kentucky tobacco buyout. And I'm like, so the same thing that's happening, like that was the good deal they got. I'm just like, what's going on in America? Like, what the heck has been happening? This sustainable development cartel. And I'm like, come to think of it, now that we're legalizing marijuana, are any farmers allowed to grow marijuana in America? And why aren't tobacco farmers allowed to, now that corn, we have a corn surplus, it turns out they're growing corn because China stopped buying soybean. I wonder why that's the crop they decided to stop buying. So that they had to switch to Bayer corn, because they're not allowed to switch to tobacco, which every American smokes, now that they're shoving it because of Turning Point USA shoving it onto kids. Thank you. I wonder who funded Turning Point USA to suddenly be in all 50 states before anyone knew Charlie Kirk's name. I just wonder. So now there's a huge demand for tobacco, but no one can grow it on their land? I'm just like, what's going on? So my point of all this is to saying there ain't no GOP. And there ain't no DNC. My father and my mother were both Catholics. They're both Catholics. They're both like, do not raise a gun. Do not rebel against the Pope. Do not lift a finger. Don't lift a finger. Do not speak up unless you are spoken to. Strict. I was taught the crucible. I was taught these strict Protestant ways of like how we've come out of the dark ages because, children weren't allowed to be spoken to. You couldn't speak unless you were spoken to. And I was like, that was not unlike my upbringing. Not unlike my upbringing. And I'm like, are there any different parties? Is it really any different? And when I see these battles going on between okay, let me just give you final proof. When it came along and finally President Trump was in office and he offered them bill after bill after bill to take down sustainable government. Our government grew 3 times the size under Obama. From sustainable development bills, the UNFCCC just passed down all these Germany bills to just take away all of our rights. The GOP had both House, both Senate, had them both. Did they pass any of it? Nope, they didn't. And guess which ones? When they needed more votes for the Democrats who needed to get elected again, who needed more votes, when they needed to shift votes around, because some of those votes weren't complete. I noticed that it's this 73 vote ratio, when they needed to shift votes around to get it passed, to Democrats who needed to vote more with Trump to make it get the Trump vote. That is how much Democrats have shifted to Trump, is that they had to shift yes votes. That's why Senator Feinstein had more yes votes than Rand Paul. And I'm like, so how did Rand Paul get away with getting elected? How is Rand Paul getting away with that many no votes against Trump? And I'm like, that's because they have him in the paper all the time. And maybe it was an off year for his election. He's not getting elected. No one's going to look at him that year. But he's in the papers all the time. And that's the whole point of name recognition. If they have your name in the paper all the time, either if it's positive or negative, it's very hard to vote against that name, isn't it? Very hard. And now suddenly Chuck Grassley's name has just disappeared. And I'm like, he must be really important to them. Really important to them. That scares the heck out of me that they are not talking about him at all. Not talking about him at all. And the final thing I want to say is when I say these Nazi youth, kids are not bad. I have a lot of young followers and you guys are amazing. Some of you guys are my most dedicated, most amazing followers. You guys are the best diggers and everything. I'm not saying that you're bad or you're Nazi youth or anything like that. Far from it. Some of you guys you have cojones larger than your parents, or you know what I mean? Like I'm saying, like, and you know it. You know it. I'm saying, like, I mean, that's some of you parents don't understand why your kids are checking out. It's because you're not aware. They're way more aware of what's going on around than you are. Like, they're more concerned with, they can see global trends. And parents can be concerned with just their lives. And kids are seeing what's coming down the road. And they're like, can we care about what's coming down the road? I can see 30 years out ahead of me. We need to care now. Who we elect now matters, and I need a solution to my future. They're getting the feeling that what happens now will affect their future, and they're absolutely right. And so I would like to amend this about my GOP statement when I said just the next incumbent. There are no incumbents left. They have figured that out. They are switching seats around. They are doing a ton of like no incumbent, and they are just switching over a state legislator. They're having someone just switch in that was already like a person who was a politician from another thing. So like they did it in North Dakota. They had just a legislature. He was a representative, not Kevin McCarthy, Carthy, Carthy was in there, and he was their representative in North Dakota. And so they moved out Heitkamp and they put him into senator. So that way it looked like it wasn't an incumbent coming in. It looked like a new young face, but he was really a representative in there. So he's already a dirty politician, already in D.C., already funded by ExxonMobil. And John Oliver did this big thing on how oil is just destroying North Dakota. And nope, they put in another oil guy. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, it's like people think the oil contracts will just disappear. I'm like, no, you might actually get wealthy off your oil contracts for once. That's what'll happen. The oil won't disappear. You will have power for once. That's what will happen. You'll make money. Why do we think we need politicians to make money off our land? You seem to think that no one can make deals for you but yourselves. That's what the entire American Revolution was about, was that we said we're created equal. We're smart enough to make our own decisions about our own land. That's what so I'm so far independent. I'm not conservative. I'm not liberal. I'm so far from any of that. I am so beyond any of that now. Like libertarian, I'm not, because I am amazed. This is why I say that, because I'm realizing well, I was friends with liberals. Like, all my friends were liberals. And yet I was saying they made me feel awful about my marriage. And I was like, now that is like two different, like that is almost dissociative. How can all my friends be liberal? And then I said, they made me feel awful about my marriage. And I was like, well, my friends didn't make me feel awful about my marriage. My Hollywood's friends didn't make me feel awful about my marriage. And I'm like, no, that's a loudspeaker on my phone, like on my internet, from being locked up for this many years and having to be online for politics, right? When I was dancing and when I was out there consulting, I wasn't online ever. I wasn't on my phone forever. I wasn't listening to the media. I was just talking to a neighbor, right? And they were like, well, why are you doing that? Like, I was like, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. That's like $30,000. And they were like, buy used. And I was like, and I hadn't even considered, I was like, I've always bought used for that. What made me think I didn't? And I literally was like, I can't move on until I figure out why I didn't think to buy used. I've always bought, why didn't I think? And I had to sit there and I realized the only thing I could come up with was that I have been on freaking online for so long. I've lived online, and there's just all the 10,000 images a day has just gotten to me, that it has just wiped any idea of like actually the way I used to live and the normalcy of being on the ground. It's just completely wiped it from my mind, of like going around to people and contacting people through the newspaper and just paying, cash, and paying like 2% of what you would pay, I just cannot. I'm just like, where did I lose my way? And I'm just like, and it feels like that same thing of like, here I was with all my friends, and none of them made me feel like crap about being married. But then I get online and they make me feel on crap like being married. And then what did I say? Oh, that's right. The GOP didn't make me feel. They felt great about marriage. No, the GOP didn't support marriage. That was just these two posters of whatever, because it's hysterical. I was thinking about when I was watching, I was like, my mother demanded that I get married, and she was a Democrat. So the loudspeaker's saying one thing, my mother's a Democrat saying another. It's like everyone's in these little pockets. And what really matters, it's like everyone can believe something else. And so what are you really? Like, what party are you really? I feel like everyone in America thinks they're in this party. We're all labeled some party. And then we're all given an image of what a party is. We all think a party is something. I'm sure a lot of people think the GOP are one thing. But let me tell you, 2 years ago, you all thought the GOP were never Trumpers. And suddenly now, you think they're all pro-Trump, don't you? You all suddenly think they're pro-Trump. Why? Because they say, oh, we're against Nancy Pelosi. Just for that one reason. And I am telling you right now, all I have to say is I just follow votes now. I follow votes and legislation. Votes and legislation. I am trying so hard to get back to votes and legislation. And the more I get back to that votes, legislation, the more I get back to Tucker Carlson just did a speech and he's like, it's not the government who's out to get you. It's companies out to get you. And it is. It is companies and the people who run them. Bill Gates, the big, huge billionaires, and the people who run them, BASF. It is just people who value profit over life. And that's why free market capitalism scares the crap out of me, because free market capitalism is literally profit over life. If it means killing a child because it's profitable, they'll do it. That's exactly what that means. If you're not willing to have certain trade restrictions over human rights, if it means putting someone in a slave labor camp because it'll make you 50 cents more a day, you'll do it because it means cash money in your pocket and you get to buy land for the UN and now the UN owns it. Great. Their nation grows. And congratulations to Greta Thunberg. You did a great job. I hope you win that Oscar. Congratulations to her parents, however. I think that you have done a great disservice to your daughter because she will never be recognized on that Oscar stage. And the moment she's ever found out to be an actress, she will be let go. I am very disappointed in you guys. You're doing a huge disservice to her. I don't know how much they're paying you, but it's not worth her individuality. She should be an individual and be on a TV screen or a movie screen. She's a very good actress, and you are doing her a huge disservice. She could have been the next Dakota Fanning, and you didn't give her that. You wronged her greatly. All right. To the rest of you, I love you very much. Peace out. Wish I was feeling better. I hope this wasn't too big of a rant. Mwah. Peace out. And to the revolutionaries, I think we are all revolutionaries when we start learning the actual bills that are being passed and the actual legislation. I dare you to go read what Trump is doing. I dare you to actually read the legislation that he's doing. Let me read it to you. Let me see. Hold on. All right. He's charting a future. It's literally posted on the whitehouse.gov. So that means it is literally a press release statement. Not a tweet, a press release statement on whitehouse.gov for all nations to see. That's as real as serious you can get. President Donald J. Trump is charting a future of nations that empowers our citizens, respects our sovereignty, and protects our freedom. At the UN, he said, quote, if you want freedom, take pride in your country. If you want democracy, hold on to your sovereignty. If you want peace, love your nation. Lifting up our nations. President Donald J. Trump has shown that the path to prosperity and strength lies in lifting up our people and respecting our sovereignty. That's the biggest answer to sustainable development, IG Farben, BASF, and the Giving Pledge I have ever heard. And then it goes point by point by point by point by point by point by point about how he's done that through all these executive orders attacking it, how it's lifted his nation up out of poverty, and how their nations can prosper as well if they just let go of sustainable development and the companies that brought it, and it will lift their people out of chains. I love you so much. You can donate down below and reward me for my labor. Just $1 a month is all I ask. And yeah, my husband's here. And it's a big day. Love you. Bye. Go Kentucky. Go get Mitch McConnell to change that calendar. Change that calendar. He's giving Congress like 4 months off a year because the climate change agenda is just making all the laws. Tell him no. If you want the job, or retire. If you don't want the job, give it to the guy who lost. And those are all the Trumpers who try to run. Yeah, you got a lot of power, Kentucky. Lots of power. Go use it.